Hi again. I want to talk to you today about the history of Israel and Palestine. The Bible gives an exact history of the whole area of Israel and Palestine. And there's been all kinds of debates about how some of the land should belong to the Palestinians and some should belong to Israel. And there's all kinds of debates going on about that, even among Christians. And I find that fascinating because the Bible just very, very plainly lays out what the real history of the land is and who it belongs to. So we're going to look at what the Bible says about Israel and Palestine. In Genesis chapter 12 and verse 1, we see a synopsis of the start of the story of Abraham. It says, verse 1, "Now the Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show you." So here we see God speaking to Abram, and his name will later be changed to Abraham. So this is Abraham he's talking to. And then verse 2, "And I will make of thee a great nation." Now, this is an interesting statement because we'll see later on that God makes many nations out of Abraham's children. He says, "I will make of thee many nations." Here he says in verse 2, "I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless you, and curse those who curse you. And in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed." Christians in the New Testament are called the children of Abraham. Those who are of faith are the children of Abraham. So here we see that through Abraham, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Yes, salvation comes to the whole world through Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is the seed of the woman that was promised way back to Adam in the Garden of Eden. And that, of course, came through Jacob, and that is the seed of Abraham. So here we see that, yes, in Abraham shall all the families of the earth be blessed, and those who are of faith are children of Abraham. So we see in verse 4, "Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran." And we see that they went forth into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land into the place of Shechem, and into the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanites were then in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram, and said, "Unto thy seed will I give this land." So here we see that he tells Abraham that unto his seed he will give this land. Now he's not specific as to which sons of Abraham he will give this to yet. Okay, so he's just saying to Abraham's seed. Now, many nations come out of Abraham, including the nations that surround Israel later on. Those are the sons of Esau and Ishmael, and those are also the children of Abraham. So we're not yet seeing the separation of who this land is given to yet. Moving on to the next chapter, chapter 13, we see, starting at verse 8, "Abraham said to Lot, Let there be no strife between me and you, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen." They were having problems with their herdsmen because they had so many cattle, and they had problems with the land being divided. And Abraham and Lot were both very rich. And he says here, "Is not the whole land before thee?" Now this is Abraham talking to Lot. And he says, "Separate yourself, I pray you, from me. And if you will take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if you depart to the right hand, I will go to the left." So here we see that Abraham and Lot are going to part ways. So verse 11, "Then Lot shows him all the plain of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan." And then in verse 14, we see it says, "And the Lord said to Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now your eyes and look from the place where you are northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see, to you will I give it, and to thy seed forever. So once again, this is talking to Abraham. Abraham has a number of nations come out of him, but this is spoken to Abraham. And we see in verse 16, and I will make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if men can number the dust of the earth, then so shall your seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Moving on to chapter 15, starting at verse 7. Once again, God speaking to Abraham. And he said to Abraham, I am the Lord that brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give you this land to inherit it. And now let's go down to verse 18. In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto your seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites, and the Kenizzites, and the Cadmonites, and the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaimites, and the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Now, God is telling Abraham that he's going to displace a number of nations and give this land to his seed. Now, you can't get any more plain than this. He tells them even who the nations are, who he's going to displace. If we move on to chapter 16, starting at verse 9, we see the story of Ishmael. Sarah's maid, Hagar, had a son by Abraham, and his name was Ishmael, because Sarah was unable to have children at that point, although she did later have a child. But at this point, she didn't have a child yet. And so she fled from Sarah because Sarah wasn't treating her well, because Sarah was human. And the angel of the Lord said to Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, Return to your mistress and submit to her hands. And the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. Now he's talking to Hagar, the mother of Ishmael. Okay, so Ishmael is going to become a great nation. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Behold, you are with child and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. And he will be a wild man, and his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Now, this is a great representation of all the nations that are around Israel. They dwell in the presence of their brethren. There's many sons of Abraham who make up the nations around Israel. These are what are now the Muslim nations that are surrounding Israel. Now, moving on to chapter 17, we see here that God is speaking to Abraham again. He says, I will make my covenant between me and you, and will multiply your seed exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. So here we see that Abram becomes the father of many nations. And then he says in verse 5, Neither shall your name be called any more Abram, but your name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made you. So here we see that Abraham is the father of many nations, not just Israel, but of many nations. And I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations, plural, nations of you, and kings shall come out of you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you, and your seed after you in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto you, and to your seed after you. And then verse 8, about those people, it says, And I will give unto you, and to thy seed after thee, the land wherein you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Now the key here is he says, for an everlasting possession. Now, does that possession ever end? He says this land of Canaan is given for an everlasting possession, and he specifically says all the land of Canaan. That just happens to be the land that is Israel's, that God gives to Israel, and we'll see that as we move on here. This is not talking about any other lands around Israel. This is talking about specifically the land of Israel. And it's given as an everlasting possession. Is that going to end anytime? No, it's everlasting. So let's move on to chapter 21. Starting at verse 2, we see that Abraham has another son, and it's Isaac. And so Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time which God had spoken to him. And we know that Isaac was the son of promise. God promised Abraham a son through Sarah, and that was Isaac. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Now remember, Sarah was his wife, and Isaac was his only son by his wife. Ishmael was by the maidservant Hagar. Not to say that Ishmael wasn't a legitimate child. Of course he was. Every child is a legitimate child. And you can't blame a child for the fact that he has a different mother or father. We see that Abraham called the name of his son that was born to him through his wife, whom Sarah, his wife, bore to him, Isaac. And then down in verse 8, as the child grew and was weaned, Abraham gave a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne to Abraham, mocking. And wherefore Sarah said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. And this thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. Now you see that Abraham loved both of his sons. He loved Ishmael and he loved Isaac. He loved them both. And notice verse 12. God said to Abraham, let it not be grievous in your sight because of the lad. Now, I think this is really interesting. That God is not angry at Abraham because he had a child with his servant woman. And he actually acknowledged the son. God acknowledged the son that Abraham had through the servant woman. And he says, in all that Sarah has said unto you, hearken unto her voice. Hold on, what did she say? She said, the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. So here we see Sarah said that, and God says, in all that Sarah has said, hearken unto her voice. For in Isaac shall your seed be called. Now here, you can't get much more plain than this. There's two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Who is Abraham's seed going to be called through? Isaac. Isaac is the son of promise and the son of Abraham's wife. Through Isaac shall your seed be called. But notice verse 13. And also of the son of the bondwoman, that's Ishmael, will I make a nation, because he is your seed. So notice that God acknowledges Ishmael as being Abraham's seed, and even says he will make him a great nation. And God's not mad at Ishmael for being born. It's not Ishmael's fault that he was born. It's not his fault that Abraham decided to have a son with the bondwoman. That's not Ishmael's fault. And God even says, I'll make a great nation out of him, out of Ishmael. And those are the Ishmaelites. And they do become a great nation. And that's most of the nations that surround Israel, what are now the Muslim nations. We see later on that God tells Hagar, arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in your hand, for I will make him a great nation. Now moving on to chapter 25, starting at verse 1, then Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah. Now we see Abraham takes another wife. We saw in chapter 23 that Sarah died, and she was buried. So Sarah dies in chapter 23. And in chapter 25, Abraham took another wife, and her name was Keturah. And notice this. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, and Midian, Sound familiar? That's the Midianites. And Ishbak and Shua. And Joshkan begat Sheba and Dedan. And the sons of Dedan were Asherim and Letishim and Luam. And these are the fathers of nations around Israel, from children that were born to Abraham. So Abraham's children all become great nations. Notice that Abraham didn't just have Isaac and Ishmael. He had all these other sons through Keturah. And we see here the sons of Midian. This is the Midianites. Ephah and Epher and Hanak and Abida and Eldah. And these were the children of Keturah. Keturah was Abraham's wife. But notice verse 5. And Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac. Let's move on to verse 12. It says, now these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, bore to Abraham. And these are the names of the sons of Ishmael, by their names according to their generations, the firstborn of Ishmael, Nebajoth, and Kedar, and Abiel, and Mibsam. And all these sons here, these are the fathers of the Muslim nations that now surround Israel. So these are the sons of Ishmael. And these are their names by their towns and by their castles. 12 princes according to their nations. So notice that there's 12 princes that come from Ishmael, just like there's 12 that come from Jacob. And Jacob is, of course, the son of Isaac. And then we see in verse 19, these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife. And she was the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian and sister of Laban the Syrian. And here in verse 21, Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to Rebekah, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from your bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Now we know that the elder is going to be Esau, and the younger is going to be Jacob. Esau is the father of the Edomites. The Edomites are another nation that is sometimes they're friends with Israel, and at other times they're enemies of Israel. But they're another nation that lives alongside Israel in the same area. The elder shall serve the younger. So here we see that Esau serves Jacob. The first came out red like a hairy garment, and his name was Esau. And after that came out his brother, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. Now, Jacob, we know, later his name is changed to Israel. And he is the one who actually becomes Israel. Jacob's name is changed to Israel. And his sons are the 12 sons of Jacob who become Israel. So now let's move forward to Exodus. We know that the Israelites, they were in captivity in Egypt. And that's because they went to Egypt when Joseph, the whole story of Joseph, interpreting the dream and becoming basically the governor of Egypt because of his interpretation of the dream. Exodus chapter 1, these are the names of the children of Israel who came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Now that's 11 there, but the 12th is Joseph. And we know that Joseph's 2 sons were Ephraim and Manasseh. And God said they would each be tribes because they were the sons of Joseph. Because we see in verse 5 that all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already when his brothers came. And so Joseph died and all his brethren and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, and the land was filled with them. And so there rose up a new king from Egypt, and he didn't know Joseph, and he basically put the Israelites into captivity, put them into slavery. But if we look at chapter 3, we see how Moses was raised up by God to deliver the Israelites from the Egyptians. And in verse 1, Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now notice what God calls himself at this point. He doesn't call himself the God of Abraham, the God of Ishmael. No, he calls himself the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. In other words, this is the line of the people of Israel. And he says he's the God of Israel. And the Lord said, I have seen the affliction of my people. Now this is God speaking, and he's calling Jacob, the sons of Jacob, his people. That's the Israelites, and they multiply greatly. So it's not just 70 of them anymore. They multiply greatly as they're slaves in Egypt. They have become a great people. The Lord says, I have seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt. So he's talking about the Israelites because he says he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. And then verse 8, I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land into a good land and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Hold on a second. That's exactly who God told Abraham was going to be displaced, and that would become a permanent inheritance, an everlasting inheritance. God plainly told him. We just read it. God said it was a everlasting inheritance. And what was that land? The land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And he says in verse 9, Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come unto me. And I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Now he just got through calling them his people. And he's saying he's going to bring them into the land that was promised to Abraham and to his seed as an everlasting possession. Not just a temporary possession, an everlasting possession. Now let's move forward to Joshua. Joshua chapter 1, starting at verse 1. Now after the death of Moses, remember Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke unto Joshua, the son of Nun. There's a joke that Joshua was the only man in the Old Testament who didn't have a father because he was the son of Nun. But he was Moses' minister, and the Lord spoke to Joshua and said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over the Jordan, you and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Over the Jordan. What did God tell Abraham? He said all this land from across the Jordan to the great river Euphrates. And then verse 3, every place that your sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea towards the going down of the sun shall be your coast. So you see, there really is no doubt that the land of Israel belongs to the Israelites. The Jews are the inheritors of the land of Israel. And the land of Israel is outlined in the Bible. At this moment, the Israelites don't actually possess all of their land. God gave them more land than what they currently have. So to displace any of Israel right now would be not biblical, because actually more of that land belongs to them than what they currently have. So these people that say that Palestine should have part of the land of Israel, Well, they're saying that God is wrong then. They're saying that God didn't give them that land. Did God give them that land or didn't he? Well, according to the Bible, he did. He gave that land to Israel. And once again, the Bible is the most authenticated historical document you will ever find. I mean, there's nothing that is more authenticated than the Bible. The Bible is proven authentic in so many ways that it's ridiculous. These people that say the Bible is not authentic and that, oh yeah, it's been changed. Hold on a second. The Bible has been passed on through generation, through generation, through generation. It's been copied and copied and copied over and over and over again. And we still have the same book. And it was copied from the Great Bible. And before that, it was copied from the original manuscripts that were the letters of the apostles. And before that, there was the Jews who kept very stringent copies of their history. And the Israelites were extremely thorough in the keeping of their history. So, I mean, if anyone says that the Bible is not authentic, they're absolutely blinded by the devil, because they're basically saying that what is obvious to the rest of the world is wrong. To anyone who uses scientific thought, the Bible is the most authenticated document in the world. And it says that basically the land of Israel belongs to the Israelites. It does not belong to the Palestinians. They have no claim to it, because God, the creator of this world, gave it to Israel. He specifically said the sons of Jacob. That's who he gave the land to. So that's my message for today. Thanks for watching.